I think that's important. We have in a moment our board work calendar discussion, and one of the things Dr. Noonan talked about was the importance of looking at policies, and staff has been looking at policies in terms of data security and student privacy and cross-checking it, and we're going to have a conversation that's built in as well. So we want to talk about what we want to glean from that conversation, and I want to make sure we have the time to do it. So I would suggest that if there are other in-depth kinds of pieces that we want to explore, that we do that at a time when it's not 10 of 10 at night, because it's an important conversation.
Well, but here's the problem, Leslie. We heard tonight some gratitude for the district making this decision, and yet the board, we didn't approve a pilot of Loud Cloud. We approved an implementation of Loud Cloud. There's an inBloom pilot going on, but there's not a Loud Cloud pilot going on. The motion that Jill made was the implementation of an IIS system, not a pilot in one articulation area or for the ability to front-end 5 of our 10 systems. So I don't think it's fair to our community to communicate an opt-out process when we're not clear of how that dovetails to the decisions we've made.
I'm suggesting to us all that this conversation is too important to have at 10 of 10 at night. And what we said we would do for this agenda item is a 5-minute update on the opt-out. What I would recommend is when we get to the board work calendar, we talk about that policy conversation and we talk about any other kind of conversation that we want to have about inBloom. The study session we had, I thought, raised lots of great potential conversation topics moving forward, in addition to the concerns that have been raised by parents. And so I would recommend, instead of going much further, and we're over time with this, that we take the time to do it well and to do it thoughtfully.
Okay.
I don't
And Dr. Noonan, closing comment, and we'll
Okay.
move to monitor.
I have a very long list of questions that have been sent to me that I have not shared with anybody. But I believe me, they come from the community, so they need, I believe, response. So how do you want me to do this? How do you want me to share these questions with you? Emails. Wait a minute, I want to know how to do that, and I want to know, and I agree, we need to set some time in, I don't know, October or whatever, that we spend on those questions, on other questions, really kind of hashing this thing out. Personally, I'd like to get this cinched down as much as we can before the two of us are off the board, because we've been dealing with it so long. I don't want to hand over sort of this big, incomplete question. I don't feel that that's fair to the next board. I'd like to get as much as we can, cinched down.
So I have 2 reactions that I put on the table for the board's consideration. One is, I think you can send those questions to Dr. Stevenson and to the board. Let's look at those questions.
I did that, and I was told not to, so please clarify that for me.
Well, let me emphasize that when you receive questions, you need to send them to us so that we can respond to them.
Let's
So you can
let me hold on one second, one at a time, because we've got to close the loop on one, and then we can move on to another. So let's circle back to the questions that you discussed. What I would recommend is when we have our conversation about the board work calendar, we're going to have another business meeting in 2 weeks, right, on October 3rd. So what I think would be great is if you could pull key study topic areas that you'd like to focus on that come out of those questions, and then we can discuss those as a board. I would encourage other board members to bring topics, just as we did with the board questions tonight. Yeah, and we can look at it, because you raised a very good point about the questions and sending them. That's fair enough.
The only thing, it's not true though, Leslie. The only thing that breaks the sunshine laws is if we respond to the questions. It is 100% appropriate for Dr. Noonan to share with us the questions that the community is giving us. What we shouldn't do is respond back to her in our thoughts of what that changes. I would very much like to have, if you have a set of questions, the opportunity to review those and see what you're hearing, and if it's the same thing. So I'd ask you to send those.
And I would also say you said
Wait. Let's back up. We cannot respond to questions that we don't have. Now, you had all submitted questions. We responded to approximately 39 questions, which you did get back on the 22nd.
Sorry, Cindy.
But I don't think I need to answer
We
them. I don't think I need to answer them.
we cannot give you answers if you don't send the questions. There's never a problem with sending questions to the staff so that we do the responses.
But you have to copy the rest of us.
So we need the questions to do responses. And let me emphasize one thing that's very important here. No parent has to make any decisions in the next 2 weeks. We said we have 2 years to communicate, clarify, and demonstrate. So one of the things we've committed to is that our community has ongoing information and ongoing understanding of the choices they're making. This is a long process.
And I'd like to close, I'd like to move on to the monitoring report. So my recommendation would be that we have a conversation at our next board meeting, and I think it's incumbent upon the board to bring to that conversation. It's our responsibility not to deluge with 100 questions. We may still have 100 questions that we want to send to staff and get answers to over time. But I also think it's incumbent upon the board to come to the board work calendar conversation and say, in the time we have remaining, these are the 3 most critical things that we want to tackle in the time that we have scheduled together. And that's what I would recommend moving forward.
So I don't disagree with that, but I'd like to give the superintendent guidance that it makes me very uncomfortable to continue a conversation in the community that there is an opt-out process when we as a board haven't had that conversation.
And we will have more conversations about this when we get to the board work calendar and identify what those continuing conversations and questions might be. Next on the agenda, we are going to go to the